guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is the start of a new series. A while back I started a series called Weird Wisconsin, where I talk about stories involving Wisconsin that are weird. So I thought I would do the same for the rest of the world. There are a ton of stories that I have found that just make me laugh, make me go, huh? And all of the in-between, however they don't happen in Wisconsin. So, this series is going to be called Weird World History. And I'm going to be talking about stories from history that I find fascinating, downright weird, or just funny. So, let's get into it. To start this series off, I thought I'd start with a story from history that has entertained me since I found out its existence. That is the Emu War of 1932. Following World War I, a large number of discharged veterans were given land in the western part of Australia to farm. Get money for themselves and to help the overall economy of Australia. With the onset of the Great Depression in 1929, the government of Australia encouraged farmers to up their wheat production, and they promised that they would give them more subsidies for this wheat. However, they did not follow through with this promise. Because of these recommendations and the promise of subsidies, the price of wheat continued to plummet. By October of 1932, the situation had gotten to a point that it was just really, really bad. They had planted a ton of wheat, but were not given the promised subsidies that they were told they were going to get. And so they were getting to the point where they were about to harvest this wheat, but they were tempted to just not give it to anybody because they're like, if I'm not going to get my subsidies, what's the point? Now, the farmers were going through it. I mean, it's the Great Depression. They were promised these subsidies and weren't given them, so they're already kind of on edge. And to make matters worse, approximately 20,000 emus decided that they were gonna, stomp on them. Life is already kicking these farmers, and then emus decided to jump on top of them. Emus regularly migrate during breeding season from the inland of Australia to the outer edges, which was through this farmland. Emus migrate hundreds of kilometers a year in search of food and water, and when they found these plots of land full of wheat and water for the livestock, they found that this was the place they wanted to call home. The emus consumed and spoiled the crops because, if you don't know, emus are ginormous and quite heavy, so when they found a crop they wanted to eat, they would kind of crush the crops around it. So not just eating them, but also just stomping on them and just destroying them, and they'd break through fences, which would then allow other animals to get through, like rabbits, and it was just bad. Farmers relayed their concerns to the government, being like, hey dude, we're trying to get this wheat for the subsidies that you promised us, which you're probably not going to give us. However, these emus are destroying our entire crop. So can you help us please? A group of ex-soldiers was sent to meet with the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pierce. Having served in World War I, the farmers knew the strength of machine guns and requested their service. The minister readily agreed with a few conditions. The machine guns would only be used by military personnel. The government would pay for the transport of these troops, and the farmers would provide food and accommodation and would pay for the bullets used to get rid of these emus. Military involvement was due to begin in October of 1932. The war was conducted under the command of Major Gwynedd Purves Wyn Aubrey Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery's 7th Heavy Artillery, with Meredith commanding soldiers Sergeant S. McMurray and Gunner J. O'Halloran, armed with 2 Louis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The operation was delayed by a period of rainfall that caused the emus to scatter. However, the weather lightened up and the emus started to bunch back up around November 2nd. These troops were deployed on November 2nd to help assist farmers and, according to newspaper accounts, collect 100 emu skins so their feathers could be used for hats. On November 2nd, the men traveled to Champion, where 50 emus were sighted. As the birds were out of range, of the guns, the local settlers attempted to herd the emus into an ambush, but the birds split into small groups and ran, so it was difficult to target them. Nevertheless, while the first fusillade from the machine guns was ineffective because they were kind of really far away, a second round of gunfire was able to kill a number of birds. A number we don't know. Later that same day, a small flock was encountered and perhaps a dozen were killed. The next significant event was on November 4th. Meredith had established an ambush near a local dam where more than 1,000 emus were hanging out, and they're like, "We got 'em, boys." This time, the gunners waited until the birds were close enough where their bullets would do something, and they let it fly. However, the gun jammed after only killing 12 birds, and then the birds scattered, and they were gone. In the days that followed, Meredith moved south as rumors were spreading that the emus down there were kind of tame, easy pickings. However, he wasn't having much success. By the fourth day, army observers noticed each pack seemed to have its own leader now. A big black-plumed bird which stands fully at 6 feet high and keeps watch while his mates carry out their work of destruction and warns them of our approach. So the birds are getting smarter. At one stage, Meredith decided to attach one of these machine guns to the back of a truck. However, the emus were faster than the truck, and they couldn't even let out a single shot because it was so bumpy and it just wasn't stable enough to be able to shoot these birds, even if it was fast enough. By November 8th, 6 days after they began this tirade against the emus, they had shot off 2,500 rounds of ammunition. Now, the amount of birds that they had killed was not certain. One newspaper said about 50, but then there was also a report that said they'd killed about 200 to 500. Really, they weren't doing much, and their dignity was in the garbage can. They were just like, these birds are powerful beasts. I mean, they shot off 2,500, and let's say they killed the most that they reported, 500. 2,500 rounds it took to take out 500 birds. That's not great. Summarizing the culls, ornithologist Dominic Cervenetti commented, "The machine gunner's dreams of point-blank fire into serried masses of emus were soon dissipated. The emu command had evidently ordered guerrilla tactics, and its unwieldy army soon split up into innumerable small units and made use of the military equipment uneconomic. A crestfallen field force therefore withdrew from the combat area after about a month." On November 8th, members of the Australian House of Representatives discussed this operation. They're like, this is not working. We are spending way more money than we are getting results. Following the negative coverage of events in the newspapers, because obviously they're probably getting ripped a new one, like they're just getting made fun of left and right. They actually went to war with emus and they're losing. What didn't help is a lot of newspapers were saying that only a few emus were killed. Obviously, the number at this point was not confirmed, so we don't know how many emus they actually killed. Supposedly 500, but that could have just been the army people saying that to make themselves feel better. Because of this bad coverage and the fact that they were losing, Pierce pulled the military personnel out on November 8th, which means they were only out there for about a week. After the withdrawal, Major Meredith commented how these emus were just like powerhouses. Like, they were like trucks. If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. After the army was withdrew from the area, the emu attacks continued, because obviously it only been 6 days. They're not stopping. They found an area where they got food, they got water, they're hanging out, they're having a good time. So the farmers contacted the government again. They're like, please help us. The hot weather and drought did not help the situation because obviously with droughts, there's less water. And when you have farms where they're like collecting rainwater or just water in general to help their livestock and their farms, they're going to go toward water, which means they're going to go toward crops. They were invading farms in the thousands. Just imagine you're at your farmstead, you look out the window and there's 1,000 emus stomping all over your hard work. Now obviously most of these birds, let's say, are 6 feet tall, bigger than, let's say the average person, average man, right? And you got 1,000 of those. And they are not, I don't know if they have the anger like geese do, where like you get too close and they attack they just attack you. But I wouldn't want to piss off an emu either, because if that thing stepped on you, especially like if they trampled over you, oh god. James Mitchell, the Premier of Western Australia, lent his strong support to renew the military assistance. They're like, guys, something needs to happen here. The problem's not fixed. At the same time, a report from the base commander was issued saying that they killed about 300 emus in the original 6 days. So in between the 200 and 500 number that was originally given. Acting on the many requests from farmers and the base commander's report, they decided to renew their efforts in this war. This decision was defended as they were saying emus were being a giant threat to farmers' livelihoods and just the economy and the agriculture, and they were being a giant pest. And they were like, all right, let's see how well this second attempt goes. Meredith was once again placed in charge of this new attack toward these emus, and the fight began. Taking the field on November 13th, 1932, the military found a degree of success over the first attempt, but I wouldn't say it was like a resounding woo! In the first 2 days, they killed 40 emus. The third day, November 15th, proved to be far less successful, but by December 2nd, they were killing about 100 emus a week. Meredith was recalled from the field on December 10th, claiming that he took out 986 emus with 9,860 rounds, approximating about 10 rounds per bird killed. He also stated that about 2,500 birds died from their injuries later on, so he didn't shoot them point blank dead, but they were found later to be dead from their injuries. In assessing the success of the cull, an article in the Cruel Guard Miner on August 23rd, 1935 reported that although the use of machine guns had been criticized by many, because obviously this is cruelty, you're just mowing down emus, I know they're causing you problems, but come on. But the method proved successful and saved the farmers' livelihood of wheat. However, due to their success, it is still widely known that the emus won. Now you might be thinking, they took out 986 and probably killed about 2,500 more from what they did. How did they lose? Well, if you remember at the beginning of this, I said that there was approximately 20,000 emus. Now this is approximate. This number might be lower, it might be higher. But let's say it's a base 20,000 emus. There were 20,000 to begin with. They killed 986 and 2,500 died of their injuries. So total, they killed about 3,486. So 3,486 emus. That's only 17%. So, they may have taken out a lot of birds, 100 a week. However, if the 20,000 number is to be believed, they didn't even take out a quarter of the birds. So, I would not consider that a success. The emus won. Despite the money spent, the rounds used, and the amount of birds killed to the amount of birds there were, the farmers did ask for assistance in a few years after this initial cull in 1932. They asked for assistance in 1934, 1943, and 1948, only to be turned down. The government's like, we ain't doing that again. Instead, the bounty system that had been instigated in 1923 was continued, and it seemed quite successful. In 1934, during a 6-month period, 57,034 emus bounties were collected. By December of 1932, word of the emu war had spread to the United Kingdom, and a lot of people were not happy with this, especially animal activists and those attuned with nature, because these military men were just mowing down emus, like just guys. They were basically exterminating the rare emu, like they were not hesitating. Now obviously these emus were causing problems for these farmers, they were causing issues, but I feel like this was just a very aggressive way to do this. However, it's 1932, maybe that's all they knew how to do. It's during the Great Depression. They're like, let's have excitement, let's go to war with a giant animal, because they're pissing us off. Throughout 1930 and onward, exclusion barrier fencing became a popular means to keep these birds out. So just wider fences, farther out fences, stronger fences, just trying to keep those birds out because obviously they're causing issues. This did cause an improvement to the emus attacking their crops. It also kept out other pests from getting to their crops, like rabbits and dingoes and stuff like that. In November of 1950, Hugh Leslie raised the issue of emus in federal parliament and urged Army Minister Josiah Francis to release a quantity of .303 ammunition from the Army so that farmers could shoot the birds. The minister approved the release of 500,000 ammunition for this purpose. Now, I don't know the population of emus in Australia, but Australia is a, let me think, island. So, you know, if you kill off enough birds, we're gonna get a extinction situation. Luckily, Australian emus were officially protected by the government in 1991, so you're not allowed to kill off your emu problem anymore. But that was in 1991, which means from, let's say, when this started in 1932 to 1990, you could. Which is a long time to kill off birds. And when you're on an island, stuff goes extinct. I mean, the dodo bird went extinct for kind of the same reason. You know, they were getting hunted off. A lot of animals go extinct because humans hunt them to the point of extinction, whether it's for meat, you know, oils, or hats. It's like humans destroy everything. But I don't know the population of emus at this day. They are now protected, so hopefully stuff like this doesn't happen anymore. I just do find it entertaining that a bunch of farmers went to war with emus and lost. They did take out a good chunk of emus, not enough. The emus definitely won. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. If you have any interesting stories from history that you would like me to cover on this new series, comment down below because I would love to hear them. Alright guys, I will see you later. Whoosh.